Welcome to Collecting Chaos and the Eternal Mylite Project. Got something a little different for you today. I mean, I'm still going to show you comics that are going to go in Mylar. Well, let's just do it. So what am I going to show you that's different? I have a Bizzaro, number 1. Number 2, number 3, and number 4. Generally a story most people would pass up. I didn't. So why do I like it? And that's what we're going to get into right now. Why do I like it? The story's actually pretty good. I enjoyed it. And a lot of times that's all I'll say about it. But number 1, it's written by Steve Gerber. I really like Steve Gerber's writing. The pencils were done by Mark Bright. He's actually pretty good. He's a lot better than I thought. I like the Frankenstein look here. But what you have is it starts out talking about LexCorp and how they do this and that, and they make big technology and weapons and stuff like that. But that's not what they're in business for. They're in business to sell the parts, and that's where they make most of their money, is off the parts once that technology breaks down, and they have to buy proprietary LexCorp parts. Well, lightning hits the building, crashes through, destroys the chamber that he's in, a cryogenic chamber, and this guy walks out. Chalky white, definitely a Bizzaro of some sort. He's having trouble remembering, he's having trouble thinking. He remembers his secretary, who he calls Sam Meam. You'll find out later that's not her actual name, but that's what he remembers her as. And his name is Albeezer, but he can't remember how to say it. And he remembers Happersan was a person that did something. What Happersan was, is he was, his original self was waiting for an elevator to go up, which he calls an excavator, which I think is just wonderful. Up to way up, yeah. And Happersan said, "Hey, you remind me of Superman. How'd you like to help out in an experiment? It won't hurt you at all." So he scans his body. He ends up making a duplicate. Puts him to sleep. Puts him in cryogenic storage for later study. So now you know kind of his origin story. He's trying to figure out what's going on. He remembers that he's married, so he goes to see his wife, who won't remember him as this guy. And it's just, you have some nerve showing your face around here. And she faints because chalky white looks like a ghost. Yeah, why not? And he says he didn't want to scare her and that he just wants to talk to his loving wife. And she points out that she's not his wife and she's not anybody's wife. And he says he just wanted to talk and says please. And so she feels a little sorry for him. And they go ahead and start talking. In the meantime, Lex Luthor is trying to figure out what happened, what this accident was, what this thing was. Did it have something in it? What's going on? And he puts his people on it to try to find out what's going on. In the meantime, they're talking. They're actually enjoying. She's getting snockered is what's going on, but she's enjoying him until he mentions Sam Meam, and that's when she said, "You mean Sam Markhand?" And that's apparently that's the woman that broke up their marriage, or the original Al's marriage with her. And she just figures if he knows about it, that means they were doing that for 2 years. So that's a big problem. So she gets out a gun and she shoots him. Right between the eyes, in the forehead. And he's, you know, like, why'd you do that? And she faints. So he decides maybe he should leave and maybe he should try to find the original Al. Maybe that can help him out. So he goes and he tries to find it. He talks to this guy, asks him if he knows what his address is. Now, I love the address, 434 Boring Drive. Wayne Boring drew Superman for years, so that's kind of a little Easter egg that some people might not have caught. So Lex figures out, okay, it was an imperfect double, it was a Bizzaro, it was of this Beezer guy because he found the notes from the scientist. So he's saying, we got to get if that thing's still walking around, I want it. So that's what he's doing next. He's going after it. So they contact Al Beezer and says, hey, look, have you seen anybody strange? Have you seen anybody coming around? Beezer says no, because nobody has. And right after he gets off the phone, who should knock but himself with a bullet in his face. They're the imperfect self with a bullet in his face. They talked for a while. And he says, you know, you got to get out of here because Lex is going to come looking for you and he's going to take you apart. He's going to find out what makes you tick. So he decides to leave. And that's what he does. And he points out that he was pathetic. He was a failure. He had dreams, but they never went anywhere. Everything was the exact opposite of what he wanted. So that kind of ends it. He leaves. He's saying, well, you know, if life is going to be bad, maybe he'd be better off dead. But he doesn't know how to get dead. And in the meantime, he's walking right in front of a truck, and you see Superman in the background. Now, here's the neat part. The first time I read this, I never ever saw Superman. I didn't see that. And that's the first one, and we're going to go ahead and put it in the Mylar here. I'll put the tape on later. And of course that brings us to issue number 2. Guest appearance by Superman, of course, and you can guess Superman saves him from the truck. So there he is. He looks over, he sees the truck coming, he says, oh good, rays of hope. Me stand here. Maybe truck crush me to dead. Goodbye, perfect world. Not happening. Superman comes in, saves the day, as Superman should. This is how Superman should act. He sees somebody in trouble, he acts. Whether it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. He just does it. And he realizes that it's a Bizzaro, but he thinks it's the Bizzaro Superman. It turns out that he discovers that he isn't. So he asks him a couple of questions. Makes Bizzaro's head hurt because... so he says, can you just leave me alone? I mean, you're making my head hurt. And Superman makes him promise not to try to hurt himself. And of course he promises with his fingers crossed behind his back. You know, if you have your fingers crossed, the promise is meaningless. Superman flies away thinking, okay, probably shouldn't have let him go, but he didn't seem like he was hurting anything. And that's when Lex starts talking about the original Bizzaro Superman. So he's thinking, well, maybe I should jump off a building. And he tries that and lands and it doesn't hurt him. So he's just waits there. He said he needs a taller building and he just waits next to a tall building. And he says, bigger buildings are no good either. You wait and wait for it to fall on me, and all I get are banana in face. So, yeah. Then he gets hungry. He wants to eat. He doesn't know how to eat. Doesn't know how to get food. He sees somebody panhandling, trying to get money from a soldier. The soldier doesn't want to. He said that he's sorry to bother you like the hairy guy, but me, I'm very hungry. You can maybe help. And they give him all the money. And he says, you gave me too much. All I want is a soda and a sandwich. Actually, he says sandwich and soda. And hairy guy, who will be in the story several times, says, let me guess, Solomon Grundy's dumber brother, right? He says, no, me, Al. And then he takes the money and he says, oh, I'm going to show you how to do I'm going to teach you what to do with your money. And he gets him a soda and he gets him, his sandwich and his soda, and so he's happy. And they team up. They decide to become partners. Of course, Al doesn't know what he's going to be partners in. In the meantime, one of Lex Luthor's female goons comes in and asks some questions of the original Al, and Al says, no, I haven't seen him, and she says she didn't like liars, and beats the crap out of him until she gets the truth that he's still wandering around. Lex puts it out, catch him. Doesn't matter what it takes, get him. So they're doing this stuff and going along, and some other panhandlers say, hey, look, we're not making any money because you guys are taking it all. How about you share with us? And he says, no. And so the guy threatens hairy guy's life. Yeah. So Bizzaro's got a gun. He's saying stick him out instead of stick him up. And the guy's trying to is saying, yeah, can I touch the register? And he says he has to think about it. And of course the Guardian shows up and discovers what's going on. He says, hey, look, I don't want to do this. I was doing this because they were going to hurt my friend. He says, well, I'd like to meet these people. So he takes them to meet him, and Guardian takes care of them. And when he gets to hairy guy, he's said, Tiny threatened to slit my throat unless I made Al pull that job. And he says, hairy guy telling the truth, Blue Man, him, we're good to Al mostly. Him teaches Al how to get soda and sandwich. So they're like partners. So yeah, in the meantime, Al just says, that's it, I'm leaving, bye. And he's trying to decide what he can do. And he realized that the original Al wanted to be a superhero or maybe a rock star. But he didn't know how to do either one. So he decides he's going to be a rock star. And there's another lightning bolt. And he realizes that the original Al's problem was he was wishing and dreaming, but he wasn't doing. So he was going to do it. He's going to live his dreams. And of course he gets captured by LexCorp, which takes us to the next issue. So let's put this one in Mylar. And I'll tape it later. Go to the next issue. Number 3. Interesting. Doesn't look like the place you would want to be. Now Apocalypse World after all. So anyway, the guys that Al was hanging out with, Al Bizzaro was hanging out with, discover that, hey, look, he's been captured by LexCorp. We got to figure out a way to get him out. And of course, they put him in a tank, and he can't get out. And they realize that this guy can actually procreate. He can mate with a female human and have a baby. And so Lex is saying we can breed an army of these things. And that's, you know, Bizzaro doesn't like that idea, so he tries to break out, and he can't because it's 3 inches thick. So he just pops the top off and knocks it over, and there you go. And he decides he's going to get out of there. He's leaving. But that's not working. So one of the women catches him and tells him to freeze monster. And he turns around and he says, hey, I'm not a monster. And how can he freeze? He didn't have an ice or a refrigerator. And he says he's not a monster, he's just Al. And he says, quiet. We're going back to the lab now. And he goes, no, bad guy want pretty girl to bore Al's children. Pretty girl are very pretty, but me not love pretty girl, see? So me can't go back. And she goes, you don't love? What are you saying? And he says, I'm not good enough. So she just starts shooting everything up. But she doesn't shoot him. And he thinks she's crazy because he didn't shoot him. And she said she has ground rules, and he's got to rule number 1 is never to regret what she missed. So she kisses him and decided it's about as stimulating as kissing a piece of chalk. And he wants to know why she did it to him. In the meantime, she shoves him into a desk of some sort, and there is a mother box there. And and the mother box communicates with him. And she says, you don't have a mother, and whimpering won't gain you any sympathy from me. Anything we can do, she says, haul him back. But a boom tube appears and takes him to Apocalypse, where he's probably captured. Given over to Desaad, and Desaad finds him incredibly boring because he can't make him do anything. He can't torture him because, although he can inflict lots of pain, it's just boring. So he figures he can use him to inflict pain. So he sends him to Granny Goodness and her orphanage. And he calls her Fat Lady, which does not get along too good with Granny Goodness. He said, does it have a name? Me am not an it, me am Al. Why Fat Lady talk so mean about me? She says, pardon me, Fat Lady? Yeah, so she has some fun with him and turns him over to one of the younger female that is training to be a female Fury, who likes to make music. And she's making music while he's scrubbing the floor, and he starts singing. And it's just something he does off the top of his head, and she likes it, and they decide, okay, we'll team up. We're going to be rock stars. In the meantime, Lex is looking all over for him and can't find him, obviously, because he's not on Earth. And you know, they're getting pretty popular on Apocalypse, and Granny Goodness doesn't like that, so she forbids the girl to see him anymore. So she's not happy with that, so she decides we're going to escape. And notice he still has the bullet in his head. So yeah, they take off and try to leave Granny Goodness's, and of course only one person has ever escaped from Granny Goodness. And they find the mother box again where it was left, and he's not happy because the corner's dented. So he wants to know if he can make mother box feel better. And she says that Mother Box needs to open a boom tube or no one's ever going to feel better again. And so Al asks Mother Box to open a boom tube. Mother Box opens the boom tube. Granny is just disappointed because she gave her unconditional love and the least they could do is give up their miserable lives. But no. They end up back on Earth right in front of Hairy Guy. I'm going to keep calling him Hairy Guy because I can't remember his name. I don't feel... Oh, Wilbur Wolfingham is his name. So they get some coffee and they talk. And he asks, what do you know about music biz? Or actually says business music. And he says, you mean music biz? He says nothing firsthand, but one racket's pretty much like the next. So on to the next... On to the next page? Yeah, on to the next issue. Where they head for the music biz. Let's put this one in Mylar. And then we'll start looking at the last issue. Which I think has kind of a surprise ending. Well, this is not a surprise to me because I've read it before. So here we go. Number 4. War am unpleasant. It's a slogan. I love this book. And again, very Frankenstein-like. I like the way that the pencilers were drawing them. And of course, Steve Gerber. I think he's great. So he's singing, and they become a rock sensation. Partially because of his lyrics that don't make any sense, and partially because her instrument can do all kinds of things and doesn't take any electricity. And it's called an apocalypse. And Lex Luthor discovers it and says, hey, you know what? Go in there, get my lawyers, take everything away from him because he belongs to me. Therefore, any money he made illicitly. And so that's what they're doing. And the original Al, which Al Bizzaro calls Al Perfect, who's far from perfect, says, well, maybe he'll help me out a little bit because, you know, he's rich now. And after all, if not for me, he wouldn't even have his DNA. So he finds the address and he tries to get a hold of him. And he can't get a hold of him. And Wilbur calls... or Wolfham, whatever his name is, calls up a Bizzaro, and they can't, you know, he says, hey, look, you know, they're taking everything I own. They even took the couch, you know, the couch is walking out right now. And she's saying, let me get my sword. But that's not working. They take him, and then the lawyers show up and say, hey, put him under arrest. The police get ready to arrest him. He says, you can't arrest me. You know, or he says, you're under arrest for trafficking in stolen goods. You have the right to... He says, this are crazy. How stole can be good? So he doesn't understand what's going on or what he stole. And then the lawyer explains it to him. You stole yourself. And every time you accept a fee to perform, you're engaging in unauthorized resale of proprietary LexCorp technology. And he points out, wait, if he's property, you can't arrest him? He said, yeah, we've got a court order to confiscate him also. So we just thought it'd be nicer because they'll feed him if we arrest him. So, yeah, they're getting ready to take him, and they hear this voice say, unhand him. And, of course, it's the young girl who's been trained as a female fury, and she's just going to town, but she's not hurting anybody. And she throws Al the mother box, and he creates a boom tube so they can escape, and they escape to someplace in South America. Fun, huh? And it turns out to where they escaped to is a factory owned by LexCorp. Lexigente brand coffee. It's a coffee shop, or it's a coffee factory, but it isn't. We'll get into that later. So they decide, okay, we'll help you out. They realize that their enemies Lex. Bizzaro is an enemy of Lex, therefore the enemy of my enemy is my compadre. And so they team up and try to figure something out. But there's problems, and most of their little band of freedom fighters have gotten to where there's hardly any left. And Clark Kent is there trying to get an interview or get inside the factory, which is lead lined. It's painted with lead paint, so of course you can't just look in. It's got dampeners in there, so he can't use his super hearing on it. And yeah, he's trying to figure out a way to get in. In the meantime, they want to help, but they don't know how. And so he says, you know, the girl, Granny trained you to be a fighter. Why don't you be the leader? And the current leader of the resistance, his sister, says, look, they're not going to listen to a girl. It's not going to happen. They're too full of machismo. So they're not going to listen to a girl, but they would listen to you. And or they might listen to you. And so he says, you know, this is Rosamunda, Ernesto's little sister, and she said, if you can talk to him and inspire them, it might make them do better. And she didn't want to lose her brother, and she kisses him on the cheek and says, do this for me. And of course Lex's female goons are on their way to talk to the president to let him know that, hey, you better squash this rebellion, or we're getting rid of the factory. And of course the president, he's getting a lot of kickback. So Bizzaro talks to them, gives them their speech, and says, now from on us follow stinky path to victory. It's a slogan, right? Viva el Stinko. And so the next page, they're driving along and they get hit by a trash truck that has stinky path written on the side of it. Clark's talking to Lois. He hears what's going on. He says it sounds like a story and a job for Superman, so he goes out. And they recognize who it is. The girl there recognizes him. It's Bizzaro says, man the tanks, blast that inorganic moron into atoms. And of course he requests a boom tube. Or he talks to Mother. She hits fire and Superman stops the bullet, of course. And a boom tube appears. And what comes out is a bunch of tanks. Well, these are tanks from Lex's factory. And so they want to, they just are Al decides the president's no good and he should be arrested and voted out of being president. Well, let me read it. Him are not presidente any no more. Him commit low crimes and misty meanies. Or Mr. Meanies. Us take vote for improvement. All in flavor say hi. Hi, 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 hi. Vote our magnanimous, him out, us in. And now the Ernesto, who's the leader of the resistance, wants Al to become the president. And he goes, no, I don't think I'd make a good president. I think you would make a better president, and so you should be the president. So he says, Whisker Face, make better presidency. He's talking about Ernesto. All me want is to marry beautiful Rosamunda, have babies, and get some peace and quiet. And, of course, Ernesto says, I would be proud to have you in my family. Clark's in the side going, it's going to make a great story if anyone believes it. So Ernesto becomes the president, and it turns out he's a pretty good president. Wolfie, or Hairy Guy, becomes the Ministry of Finance, and the girl becomes the leader of the army. She's in charge of the army. And Al Bizzaro and Rosamunda, well, actually, Al comes down to live in San Latte, which is where it's happening, to live me's dream like me lived his. So he comes down to try to just live in peace and not have any problems. And Al Bizzaro lives happily ever after with his wife Rosamunda and a little Bizzaro on the way. And the end. And it's a cute little story with a happy ending. You don't see that enough in comic books. This came out in 1999. And if you get a chance to pick it up, I'm sure it's not going to be very expensive. But if you get a chance to pick it up, it's a great little story. And I think you'll get a kick out of the way Steve Gerber writes it and the way he uses the Bizzaro speak. I enjoyed it. Yeah. Go out and buy a Bizzaro. It can't cost you too much. You might be able to get it for, $5, $10 at the most, if you're lucky. If you're lucky, it might cost that much. If you're unlucky, it might cost $2 or $3, You might get it at 50 cents a piece. You never know. Anyway, that's it for the Eternal Mylite project. A little bit different. I just wanted to do something different. I think everybody gets tired of me just showing comic after comic after comic after comic after comic. After a while, it gets old. It gets old for me, and I assume it gets old for you. So I decided to change it up a little bit. Make sure you tune in tomorrow for a little bit of cleaning with chaos. I don't know what I'm going to clean yet because, it's chaos. You never know. I still have these sitting here. I might work on those. I don't know. In the meantime, make sure before you handle your comics, you wash your hands. It's good for your comics, and more importantly, it's good for your health. And have a wonderful day. Bye.